Hello world. In today's video, I will be showing you my favorite hyperpop drum pattern, as well as giving you guys tips and tricks on how you can use it yourself. There will be a Fruity Loops project file you can download in the description below, and if you don't have Fruity Loops, there will be track stems as well, so you can just get the drum loops that way. Before we get started, I want to ask you guys something. What does Touche by Glaive, Sauce in the Rough by Brakence, Big Moves by Canebot, Scumbag by Sad Eye,
OG since 19, you took every attempt you had to fight me.
and Submarine by Trackseed. All have in common with Dylan Brady's California Girls remix. If you answered the drums, then you are correct. While not all these songs use the same drum pattern, they all follow along a similar basis for snare positioning, as well as a few other key elements that make them my favorite hyperpop pattern. I'd say the thing that I like most about this drum pattern is the way the 808s and the snare interact and the feeling of breathing that goes on throughout the beat because of it. I will be using a beat of my own to show you guys exactly how this drum pattern works. You can find this beat in the description. I'm gonna go ahead and let it play, and then I'll go over with you guys how I made the drums. Here are the drums on their own. They are relatively simple, but this will give us a better idea of what we're looking for. The snare will be mainly in the same position throughout the entire song, with a little bit of ear candy here and there to accentuate it. And the positioning for the snare is usually about halfway between each measure. At least the main snare. And to me, what brings this sound together is both that snare positioning along with how the 808s hit and how the 808s cut along with the snare. As you can see with the 808s, you have a long 808 that cuts when the snare hits. Then that gives it a feeling of a breath and movement inside of the beat that I really enjoy. The follow-up 808s and the 808s that hit after the kicks are different for every type of song in this genre, but the basic idea is to carry that 808 and to cut when the snare hits to give yourself that particular sound. And along the same lines is the hi-hats. So as you can see, there's a lot of breaths with the hi-hats when the 808s hit to give it time to breathe, along with the kicks and snares. I really like to experiment pitching my hi-hats up and down in timing with the beat. For the kicks, you want the kick to follow the 808, but also to fill in some of the extra space. So I'll play just the 808s and the kicks together so you can see how there's extra kicks throughout and not just on the 808s. Another important item is percussion to fill in the space in between the snares and kicks, so it's not just that same hi-hat, snare, and kick pattern the entire time. For this, I use both the same snare as well as some filler clap-like snares to fill in the space. Combining all those elements will give you that start, pause feeling that I feel like I hear inside of this pattern. That's what really draws my ear to it. The way that the melodies cut are different for every beat. Sometimes they let the melody continue to play after the snares. Other times the melodies also cut on the snare. And that's just a preference for how you want it to sound and what kind of movement you want in your beat. I use chops and chopped up the melody and beat throughout the beat to give it more of a sense of movement. And I think that's also something that's kind of iconic inside of the sound. So in order to do this and give the beat more space, all I did was put the beat back in its original for us. So if this was it right here, I would put it on 1/6 step, drag it back till it is 1/4, and then either duplicate it so it doubles or however you'd like to. This is my favorite type of chop. There's many ways that you could chop it in many different places. You could position it, you could do this. But I prefer more of a one right after another, something like this. Another thing that I like to do is add a secondary hi-hat layer to the second half of the drop, as well as like an additional or supporting melody. It wouldn't be a hyperpop hit without chopping up the snares as well. And when you're doing chops like that, I prefer to shorten the length of the snares to give it a more choppy sound. I also want to give you guys an example of how to make this kick and snare pattern inside of the channel rack if that's more your forte. So I'll go ahead and make a new pattern and do that for us. I'm not very good at describing this, but the snare will be on every other gray marker. So if you count 1, 2, you put a snare there, 1, 2, put a snare there, 1, 2, all the way across. The kicks can follow your 808s with a little bit of a switch up, so if you've already done the 808s, you can follow those. But if not, I'll just put in a basic little pattern here that you can follow. If you're using a channel rack, you want to click this button in the upper right here to adjust the velocities of your snares and put them to the max. Otherwise, they won't sound as loud as they did when you drop them into the actual clip. But if you followed this basic pattern, it should now sound similar to what those kicks did. So that's how you would use the channel rack to make a simple kick and snare pattern. I'll take a quick second to focus on the 808s. I layer my 808s so that it's 2 separate layers. One focuses more on the sub and the other one usually focuses more on the bass or 808 regions. It's a pretty straightforward and simple pattern where the 808s cut right when the snares hit, and then you add in a little bit of an accentuation 808s, and other than that, you just follow the same pattern. But I'll show you guys what I made. There is variations of that throughout the song because I do not like repeating the same pattern over and over again, but I stick to something similar. This isn't really as in-depth as my other tutorial videos. This is more of a tips and tricks video, as well explaining to you what my favorite hyperpop pattern is and why that's my favorite hyperpop drum pattern. If you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up and comment what other tutorials you want. I can definitely work on some melody tutorials and show you guys how I create and layer my melodies. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope everybody had a good week, and so much love to all y'all. Have a good one. Peace.